perhaps we'll be chatting here one day soon. My guest today is the founder and president of the British and Irish Trade Alliance. He's the former director of elections for Billy Kelleher. And in his spare time, he's a family man and a keen Munster rugby supporter. I'm delighted to welcome Paul Whitnell to the You and Your Business studio. Hiya, Paul.
Good afternoon. How are you doing?
Oh, fantastic, Paul. Listen, I'm going to take you on a journey as I take all of my guests. And that's that journey that starts in school. Were you one of those academics that was heading off into a stellar career? Or were you somebody who really just, academia was not on the cards?
Definitely not for me, academia. I tried to be, probably, but I just had too many distractions. I've always been kind of one of these people that found something to distract me and done that very well. So I suppose that's my claim to academia, is distraction.
So what did you do after school? Did you go into higher education of any sort, or what happened?
Yeah, I started and I lasted around a couple of weeks when I realized that I think it was Freshers Week nearly whacked me out. And there was so much activity in that regard that I said, if I stay here, I'll just get too distracted and I'll spend 3 more years on distraction. And I went, no, I just better find something else. And I actually got a job. And I'll always remember walking in to my very first interview.
Really?
And it was in Douglas Mills, a fella called John O'Shea. And I walked in the door and I said, look, can we get to the point? I said, I'm the man for the job. And, he just looked at me and he gave me the job.
Yeah, fantastic. So what sort of work was this? I mean,
it was a plumbing firm. And it was a plumbing firm, and very soon I decided that I wanted to get out delivering and down to West Cork, because they wanted to start up a run down there. And sure. I did that, and I was delivering at 6 o'clock in the morning with pipes on top of the van, and drove down to West Cork. And after 2 or 3 days, I started getting to know the guys that I was delivering to, and I'd ask them, like, do you want a bit more stuff? And what kind of jobs are you doing tomorrow, and all that kind of stuff. So within a week, I became a rep, unknowns to me. But anyway, it was great.
It's funny how you have a natural, affinity with people, that when you like people, you get to chat to them, and how quickly you're able to upsell them so simply.
Well, I've always said that, and to this day, like 53 years of age now, that my currency is people, Right. And I've always loved and adored getting to know people. And especially, strangers. I'll always reflect back to my holidays in Crookhaven, where I'd be sitting down in a beautiful place of West Cork on a pier. And, I was kind of like drawn towards strangers and having a chat with them, the boats coming in, the yachts coming in. And I'd arrive into the pub with my dad with these friends from a yacht, and he'd be going, well, where did you find these people? So it's been always a love of mine.
And that's fantastic, because really, I think people miss out on the huge opportunities because they become so insular and just don't take an interest in what's going on around them.
Absolutely. And I mean, if I reflect back now, and I suppose West Cork gave me this, where there was different cultures came in during the summer in the boats, the French and the Belgians were there in abundance then. And when you see different cultures and how they, have run their lives, you learn something from it at a very early age. So I'd recommend any young person now to actually take off, go to Australia, go across to Asia, see the other parts of the world, and become more Irish than you are when you're at home.
Yeah, and that's a tip, because it's amazing if you connect in with the Irish abroad. They are so open-armed towards you.
Absolutely. The diaspora abroad really, really shows you. And I suppose it's natural, because, I felt when I came over to the UK, that you kind of cling to your heritage, and you're passionate about being Irish. So when you've got a chance to meet people of the same ilk when you're over here, you'll do it in a heartbeat.
So what brought you to the UK? I'm sure our listeners would be interested to know.
The recession 2000, I was involved, after my start in West Cork, I got involved in the manufacturing industry in a wonderful factory called Qualsram Shires in Arklow, County Wicklow. And they were making pottery and making sanitary ware.
Yeah.
And I worked with them for 23 long years, which was, it's amazing to be with a company. But it was almost like the romantic affinity to manufacturing. It was fantastic to see a product go from, you know, from clay to into its inception as a piece of china. And it was a great industry to be in. There were a great bunch of people. And unfortunately, the demise of the construction industry led to the closure of that very place.
That's very sad.
And I'll always remember and reflect at the time. I went home and I said to my father, I had 2 kids, and I said, Dad, I just been made redundant. What am I going to do? You know? And he said to me, go for a game of golf. And I thought, what a useless piece of information he's just given me there. But what he was saying was, go think about it. You know, you've sorted out all these things before. Go away and think about it. Talk to some people about it, and you'll come up with the answer. And that I did. And you know, that led me then to take the kind of brave move of emigrating and starting afresh.
Wow. And it was a brave move to emigrate. And so what parts of the UK did you go to?
I just picked a little, you know, pin on the map, and I ended up in a beautiful place called Kent. So I'm
Lovely.
down in Bearsted in Kent, and I'm here ever since. And it's a lovely part of the world. So I get the kind of climate change that we required and really are rewarded with, really, because we do see a season over here. And you know, it's a fabulous place, and I can't complain. I've picked a lovely part of the world.
It's interesting, in a sort of brief discussion before, there's a perception from the Irish in particular, and the UK people as well, that we're all the same, that we all behave the same, but you discovered that there's a huge cultural gap there.
Well, business-wise, there is a huge cultural gap, and in many ways. I mean, historically, you know, we have a fantastic relationship, regardless of the troubles and regardless of things that happened in the past historically. There is an affinity to the UK and Ireland, and that has always been. And I suppose, you know, when it comes to the B word, and no one likes to mention it, especially when it's coming down the road again now, regardless of what you say, trade is always going to be done. And it's how we approach it is very important. And relationships are at the core of that. So that's very important. But when I went over to the UK first, there was cultural things like, you know, timekeeping. If you're standing on the left-hand side of an escalator, you will get mowed down. You know, and there was simple things like that. You know, the pub culture was different. What struck me when my young fella, I tried to get my young fella playing football, and the amount of people that would turn up on a Sunday morning with their kids to play football and watch it throughout, mom and dad, was incredible. Yeah. You know, whereas in Ireland we kind of dropped them off and let someone in the community look after him for babysit them for 2 hours, like, you know, if he's bleeding, bring him back. But you know, they were the cultural differences that I saw straight away. But there were many cultural differences that you miss, and when you emigrate and you're trying to set up a business, there's a cost to that, because for every time you haven't learned something, there's a cost to that, and that cost can become very, very costly over a period of time.
Yes, I mean, I know I've done business in the UK, and I'm backwards and forwards and regularly, and I think, like, as you identified, timekeeping, we don't tend to respect it too much in Ireland.
Well, I think we're probably getting better now, because, I mean, Ireland has become very efficient, and Ireland Inc. is the best exportable product in the world. You know, we are incredible, but we've got our own way of doing things. You know, it's very funny. I described something recently. 2 things are described. In the UK, a deal is a deal when you shake the hand. In Ireland, when you shake the hand, the dance begins.
Yes.
And there's things that you've got to get used to in that way. But we've got a wonderful way in Ireland of doing business. We've got a great fluency about us in terms of the facility and ability to be able to be flexible and make it happen. There's no such thing as no, you know, in my world anyway. And that's what I probably brought to the UK is that kind of ideology.
That's fantastic. And I also know, because there is a challenge, I often see sort of companies in the UK who wish to do business in Ireland, and they send their brochures across. And that's where you see the cultural difference, which they obviously don't see themselves. And I suppose the same works the other way back.
Yeah, I reflect on a company that last year or 2 years ago wanted to go into the Irish market, and they were a bonds company, and this company had a brilliant product because at the time it was very difficult to get a bond in Ireland because of the sureties that they'd left and all that kind of stuff. So we were bringing in a facility that was badly needed because a lot of developers were having to cash back their bonds. So 10% of the value, total value of the development, they would have to put cash up themselves as a bond. So we brought in a facility where this was done at a lot cheaper rate. But when the guy was coming into the market, he wanted to launch his product like you would do in London. You know, he wanted to do it with, you know, the flash Dublin Castle and all. And I said to him, no, 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 no. All you do in Ireland is just meet the developer in O'Donoghue's for a pint of Guinness. You know,
Yeah.
get to know him. You know, when you've built a relationship, you'll do the business all day long. So it's a different approach. So in terms of branding and all that kind of stuff, you've got to understand where you are, what's the market, and how to approach the market.
Yes, and I think the language is very important until you use it. I so often, when I was past president of the Professional Speaking Association, we'd have guest speakers over, and I'd have to brief them. Please don't mention the mainland and stay away from the humour, because while we all have a great sense of humour, sometimes it just doesn't translate that well.
No, and you're dead right in that regard, you know. And the other thing, like when I came over here first was, I mean, their religion in the UK is football.
Yes.
So, you know, here was I, a massive rugby fan. So I was trying to kill the conversation of football all the time. And all I was doing was shoot myself in the foot, you know. So you just have to, you know, football, they eat, drink, and live football.
Yeah. Oh, well, listen, I'm afraid there could be worse things in life, you know, to deal with it.
Well, just, you know, I mean, I was here last year, and they were having a run in the World Cup again, and I was going, no, please, no, 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 don't do it to me, don't do it to me, you know. I mean, we reserve the right in Eurovision to give them no points and get away with it, you know. We want to keep those little things, you know.
That's it. Can we ever forget '66? You know.
No, in fairness, I mean, they do love the UK. They do embrace sport, and you know, when I came over first, I came over when the Olympics was happening, and I have to say, the presentation, the organisation, the passion, the delivery, that was the most spectacular Olympics I've ever seen, and no one replicated, because there was true culture put into that in every sense and shape and fashion, and it was just a fantastic spectacle, and it hasn't been repeated, you know. So you have to give credit where credit is due.
Oh no,
Comedy, they're the best in the world.
Yes.
You know, sport, they're passionate, but delivery, my God, can they produce a product?
Yeah, and they have a fantastic history of manufacturing as well. I'm a huge classic car fan, and I watch programs, and there seem to be up laneways and these engineering works turning out all sorts of components. Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, there's amazing history here, and you know, you look at it down the by roads of the country in Kent in particular, and you come across some fascinating things. Like, so there is a huge culture here. It is you know, and you do realize you're living among 60 million people, so yes, there has to be a cultural difference of living among 5 million people to living among 60 million people of all different ethnic backgrounds.
Yes, no, certainly not. Just, I'd like to kind of follow up, and we were talking about the British and Irish Trade Alliance. Tell me how that came about as an idea, because you founded that.
It was born on the fact of my experience coming over here and the frustration of making those mistakes. I just felt that there needed to be a go-to platform where we could actually facilitate each other, display our generosity of spirit, and there was no strings attached to it, a giver's gain, and set up an organization that is built with those kind of values. And we did. And I started to introduce many companies in Ireland at the time. And one always comes back to me was a company down in Kilkenny called Image Shower Doors.
Right.
And they were on their knees, like a lot of companies. There was a lot of traditional family-run companies that had gone back generations that had closed in 2008 to 2010. And they were in the same category at the time. And their owner contacted me and asked me, was there any pipeline of business that I could actually proceed to see could happen for him in the UK? So I happened to be in with Ballymore, a great Irish company, Sean Mulryan.
Yep.
And I mentioned the fact that there was this facility in Kilkenny that could manufacture shower doors. And they were currently, at the time, developing a development project called Royal Wharf. That there was 3,000 units. It was the biggest residential development in Europe. And at the time we were having the conversation, and I told him about the example of this company looking for a pipeline of business. And I went through the conversation, and he said, hold on a minute, why don't we give him the order? And I nearly fell off the seat. And I went back to John Kelly, and I said to John, I said, there's a possibility here that you can actually sell in 9,000 doors and over a 3-year period, but the price has to be X and the quality has to be Y. And they delivered.
There you go.
Got X, they got Y, and they got the order. So there's an example of an opportunity when you have a kind of foot soldier in the right place at the right time to be able to create the business. So roll on 8 years, you now have 8 chapters of BITA in Scotland, Liverpool, Manchester, Leeds, London, Isle of Man, Cork and Dublin. And we have an affiliation to INUSA in America and Club Hibernia in Australia. So BITA has gone global now, and the concept of BITA is the same. It's a McDonald's burger. Everywhere you go, it's the same BITA you find. And the ethos of the organization is creating opportunity for one another within an ecosystem.
Yes. And that's fantastic. I mean, it's marvelous to be able to do that. And what makes me smile is, again, I'm talking to somebody, as I do on so many of my guests, who find their passion and then turn it into a business. And I love that, because you're obviously a passionate networker. So you have a hobby rather than a job.
Well, I just like finding, I came to Dublin there last year, for instance, and I met this great company called Harris. You might recognize it as you're passing out there the National Carriageway. You'll see a big Harris sign, That's
Pinot.
I met Mrs. Harris, and a fascinating woman, fantastic woman, and a fantastic business. And what they were making was electric vehicles, but they had the radius ability that was second to none. And we were able to introduce them to the City of London and contacts over here because we had the relationship. So that's where, when you find fantastic companies like that, it's so easy for us to connect them to the decision makers and people who actually can make things work for them. And that's the kind of level of, so BITA is fulsome of CEOs and decision makers of companies. And what we do is we examine the pathway of a company and we identify where within the ecosystem can we connect them to value. And that is why people support us then, because it's a non-for-profit organization. It is not supported by any governments. I wish we were, they might wake up. But it's self-financed, and basically what we do is we find the pathway and the value of a company, and we marry that up within the ecosystem. And I suppose Brexit is an example of where there was a lot of change in terms of certain industries were toing and froing. A lot of companies in the financial sector went from London to Dublin and all around the country as well, in Cork and Galway. And we were able to facilitate these people with, finding their feet, doing exactly what I did when I came to the UK in 2010, knowing the right people and knowing who to talk to facilitate your business and find that value. So that's what BITA does now on a day-to-day basis. So you're right. I did find, something that I was probably dreaming of, and it's a bit of me, pardon the pun.
Yeah. And it's interesting that there is no substitute for local knowledge. I mean, it just shortcuts so many things to get yourself to the right people.
Yeah, and I mean, again, I go back to the resilience of the Irish. The Irish market is a fascinating market, a fantastic market with loads of vibrancy. And we have this ability to make it happen. We punch above our weight in every genre. If you look at music, that culture, film, we punch above our weight in every genre. And it's fantastic. And it's because of that mentality. There's never say die attitude. And it's fantastic to be able to merge these together then with a fantastic vibrancy market over here. And, so all of these things that happen on a day-to-day basis, just to put a smile on my face.
It's quite interesting from being over here and networking, similar to yourself, finding so many SME and mid-sized companies, how quickly they've adapted to a changing situation. Rather than put the head down, have actually put their head up and are now looking for new opportunities.
Well, this is the thing. When you look at, we'd say, big, large companies, they need the SME sector. So, when you have a relationship at the top level and you're able to also marry that with a relationship with the SME, you can bring in opportunity. And I'll give you a great example. We had a company over here called James Connell. Oliver Connell is the name of the company. Originally from Limerick, a lovely family, great family. And they were in the frames business and the concrete frames. And again, going back to Ballymore, who were a great supporter and patron of BITA, we went to them with the opportunity. And the problem for James at the time was he had never got a job or a project that was over 20 million. So he had nothing to show when he went in to sell his wares. He had nothing to show to say, I've done this job. Right. And we introduced him to Ballymore, and Ballymore gave him the opportunity to look at a massive project in Brentford. And hey presto, he got the job. So now he's overcome that, and the company now is flourishing. He's flying it. And he's now able to get into the big arena in terms of tier 1 projects and all that kind of stuff, which is amazing. But on the way, what he's doing now is he's extracting more value from BITA because he's looking at other areas in procurement, R&D, insurance, within his business and dipping back into the ecosystem. But what he's doing, in a sense, is he's providing value and opportunity for others as well. So he's really, really embraced the ethos of what BITA is all about. And that's what it's about, givers gain. And when you get it, you get a few people who will come on the journey and they will take. Well, they won't last 5 minutes because there is a special door for them. And it's really, really quick and revolving when we find them, because that's not what we want. We're not a member gatherer. So what we want is we want to entice companies who understand the ethos of BITA, who understand the culture of how we do things, who have the patience to build the relationship. And when they have that, then they're equipped with all that comes with it in terms of opportunity and value.
Yeah, and that just makes so much sense. And as you said, it's about giving. Networking was always about giving. I'm just so tired of people thinking it's a selling opportunity and then trying to leverage that.
Networking got a bad name because a lot of people didn't understand the true art of networking. I mean, everybody thinks that networking is going into an event and popping a card out of your pocket and putting it into another fellow's pocket. That's not what it's at all. You could be talking to someone who is a doctor, and you don't know that his brother could be the biggest developer in the world. Yes. So what you've got to do is you've got to put yourself out there as a person first. Let people get to know you. You get to know them. Then get to know what they like. Then get to know what they dislike. And it's then when you have a relationship of that nature, when you know something about each other, that's when you start talking about business. Because that's when business can really flow.
Certainly we know it from the Irish side. How are you finding the British side of that? Do they have a similar culture in wanting to embrace networking in that way?
I would say more so. Go back to my analogy in terms of a deal is a deal. I would say, when they commit to something, my God, do they commit. And we've got some fantastic, vibrant chapters all over the UK now. But don't forget, there's only one of me. So, up to this, it was really, really difficult to expand this organization because I was going from Scotland to Manchester to Liverpool. But suddenly, when COVID hit, we had a game changer in terms of the use of Zoom and technology and all that kind of stuff, So It made it easier for me to actually represent myself because there has to be kind of something that glues it all together.
Yes, of course.
And unfortunately, in BITA sense, that is me. So, but you know, what we've been able to do now is we've been able to communicate far easier, more efficiently on the likes of Zoom. But I still say, and I still believe that there's no substitute for meeting people face to face.
That's true. No, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I'm afraid Zoom is a second place in that one. But at least actually, the great thing about Zoom is you can see the whites of their eyes, which isn't too bad when you're talking to people.
Absolutely. And it's been very advantageous. I mean, if you look at the construction industry in particular, I suppose that's one of the great industries at the moment that are embracing technology in a big way now. And, you know, again, the COVID situation almost forced that situation to happen, because now people have to be able to identify where people are on sites. Logistics are changing all the time. And, you know, there's companies like Simply Workflow in Ireland, a fabulous example of a company that have a platform that can, you know, save huge money. But it's all about communicating that. And that's what BITA does. We provide the opportunity on the online platform or in live sense for companies to come up, present themselves, present their wares, and explain and communicate to people how they can actually add value to a company.
Well, tell me, for our audience, for those who are obviously interested in getting involved and want to know more, where should they go and how would they contact you?
They can go to www.bita.ie to see the website. We have a new updated website coming up in July, so I'd love people to go and see the new one as well.
So that's www.bita.ie.
Yeah, and at the moment we have everything relevant to what we were doing during the COVID situation on www.bitacommunity.org.
Oh, fantastic, fantastic.
So on that, we have all the recordings of, you know, Irish companies talking about the furlough situation, talking about bounce back loans, talking about different ways of, you know, forecasting and all the added value to doing things like this in these present times. And this all resonates with SMEs, you know, the advantage to actually getting involved in training, the funding that's available in training. So what we try to do is we try to keep it relevant to the crisis management at the moment.
And that's very relevant. And I'm just looking at the sort of minute and a half or so that I've got left. I mean, would you like to maybe give your thoughts for the rest of the year? I mean, hopefully COVID, although I'm seeing Leicester now being re-locked down, Brexit still is the B word is in the background there. If you have any sort of overall comments you'd like to make in the minute and a half we've left.
Well, I'm the ultimate optimist, and I think that we will overcome. Vaccine will come into play. When that comes into play, it's going to be a game changer. Brexit will come to some sort of conclusion. We have the relationship. We will trade. We will be doing business together. There's no doubt about it. We will find a way. I'm encouraged to see a new government coming into Ireland. Hopefully that will have a freshness in terms of the impact in those negotiations. And I think in general, you know, what we have learned in this period of time is solidarity, community, and togetherness. And, you know, I think we should bring those values forward and sit back. And we've all changed our lives dramatically because of COVID and the lockdown. So I'd implore people to reflect and find some of the things that they changed in a good way and retain those values.
Well, I think that's a very, very important message and a great way to finish the show.